Madeline, I'm an alcoholic. That was great, except for the stealing part. I was like, brace yourself when Steve gets up to the podium. Known Steve for a long time. Thanks for having me. I'll just get right down to business. My sobriety date is July 4th of 2005. My home group is There's a Solution in Cary, North Carolina. It is meeting right now, and tonight's a business meeting night, so thank you for asking me to be here. And thank you, Justin. You can listen to this later, for asking me to come down. I've also known Justin for a long time. All right, I am from the city of Chicago. I started drinking when I was about 15, 16. Had no idea that I needed a drink as badly as I did until I had one. My parents separated when I was like 1. They divorced when I was 2. I'm the youngest of 3. We're all 2 years apart. It was not a good marriage. I'm actually shocked they stayed together long enough to have me. But my dad stuck around, which was great. I'm super grateful for that. He moved to a completely different neighborhood in the city, and they had shared custody of us. So I had 2 sets of friends, 2 neighborhoods, 2 sets of families, basically. My dad remarried pretty quickly. She had a couple kids already. So I had 2 holidays of everything. And my dad converted to a different religion, and my mom actually was practicing one, but raising us in and teaching us with school a different one from that. So I didn't participate in the one my mom was doing, but I was going to church twice every Sunday as well. So I had 2 of everything. And you think, oh, that's so great, twice as much love, but it was really just, I didn't know any different when I was a kid, but it was definitely confusing the older I got. And I got really, really good at being able to divide and compartmentalize my life, which again became very useful when I started drinking. I was a very high functioning alcoholic is what I would call it. When I was like, I don't know, I guess you could say I was a really high strung kid, but I was constantly beating myself about stuff that just wasn't that big of a deal. So when I was like, I don't know, once I hit high school, I was in the same class of kids, like 20, 21 kids for 9 years, 10 years really, from preschool all the way to 8th grade. Then I hit high school and I was like, oh my God, there's other people in the world, Like I had these 2 lives that I had with my parents and school, and that was it. And man, I just went nuts and immediately found us, right? So those are like the most interesting kids I could find. And when I was like 14, I started smoking cigarettes, and I'm a terrible, terrible liar to everybody except for myself. I am a pro at lying to myself, but everyone else, I can't. So like 2 weeks after I started smoking cigarettes, I admitted to my mom that I was smoking. But I gave her, kind of choices. I said, okay, I got to tell you something. I said, I'm pregnant. And she was like, I said, I'm doing drugs. And she was like, yeah, I don't think so. I said, I'm smoking cigarettes. And she was like, you're smoking cigarettes. I said, see, I just want to give you some perspective. It's not that bad, Very manipulative already. So I also was volunteering to walk the dog way more often than I ever had because I just wanted to go out and smoke a cigarette. It's just funny. So when I was like 15, 16, I started drinking. I don't remember my first drink. I do remember the first drunk. That was the first time that it really made a difference, and like my world completely changed that night. And, I must have just started drinking with my friends, and then all of a sudden things were different and they were better. They were so much better. I experienced what a lot of us experience. I had peace and ease, I had what the steps give me now is what alcohol gave me before. I could be with my peers and not worry about it and really enjoy it. And I don't know if I'd ever been able to do that. I was very bad at sports growing up. I think I came out of my mom's womb like 3 feet tall. I'm like 5'10" now, so I was very awkward as a kid. Lots of growth spurts, and again, very bad at sports. People were like, "You should be good at sports," and I would just go out there and be like this offensive weapon on whatever court or field I was on, because I was just bumping into everybody all the time. So when I started drinking, I felt like I belonged finally to something, and that none of the awkwardness that I grew up with mattered anymore. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I just did it, like a lot of us, as often as I could, in whatever way I could. And I would try any kind of drug that came my way. I didn't really get a whole lot out of drugs. I didn't like them. I thought they were too expensive and unreliable, and they were too complicated because they were illegal. Not like, drinking at 16 years old was legal, but, it was a little easier to get away with. And I could rely on that same formula that was in that bottle all the time. And so I just started doing it. And, eventually, I think I remember the first time I drank abnormally. Well, no, that's not true. So the first time that I noticed I was drinking abnormally, I was studying, just home alone, trying to do my homework, weeknight, and I had started stealing Burgundy from this giant jar that my mom had, and I would fill it up with water to replace what I stole. And I remember eventually one night, and I would study with this giant jar of Burgundy, and I remember thinking, I don't think this is normal, And then I started drinking it one night, and it was so watered down that it was just not good, And I was like, that's my fault. I didn't realize I'd been drinking that much. So, like I said, I just pursued it. I was never good at anything before that, and then I was very good at drinking, So it was like this thing that I could champion myself with, and it got to the point where I was out drinking all of my peers. I remember this one guy, he was friends with my friend, and he was huge, tall, just wide, he was thick, and I was helping to carry him out of the bar, because I outdrank him at the bar. He's falling off, and I'm going, lightweight, you know what I mean? It was just my ability to drink was, abnormal. Again, I'm in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting telling my story, so that's a given. So yeah, by the time I was 17, my drinking had accelerated so much that I wasn't doing any homework. I was going to class, but I wasn't really paying attention. I ended up getting a letter from the school after my junior year saying, your grades are bad enough that you've failed out, don't come back next year. And I was like, whoa, hold on a minute. That was the first real consequence that I had. And I remember thinking, oh man, this is not good. I had 1 year left of high school. I did not want to go to a different school. I brought it to my mom because I had to. And I said, hey, this is what's going on. And she was like, okay, what do you want to do about it? And I said, well, I've thought about my options. And I had been sitting on that letter for about a day. And I thought about my options, and I said, there's the all-girls school that I know you're thinking about sending me to, but I'm going to get into a fight every day if I go there. There's the public high school down the street, and what I'm going to do is go to the first class, then go to homeroom. I'm going to go get some friends and some clients. I'm going to start dealing drugs and bring them to the house because it's down the street from where we live while you're at work. And she was like, okay, that's not an option. I told you I'm a bad liar, so I just didn't even try sometimes. And she said, okay. And I said, what I want to do is get back into the school I just got kicked out of. And she was like, why? You clearly didn't want to go there. And I said, no, I do though. I didn't realize it was this bad. I'll really try. So I went, back to the dean's office with my mom, and we begged and begged, and she's going to take it seriously this time, and I got back in. And I was on academic probation, and I was really genuinely trying. Like, I wasn't going out with my friends. I was trying to stay home. I was trying to study. It was just really difficult, and I would get mad at the dog for like breathing too loud. It was too distracting, and so I went to this cafe because I could chain smoke cigarettes there and try and study. And this girl walks in, and she'd graduated the year before, and she was like, what's going on? And I said, oh, it's so bad. When I hit a bottom, I just, like, everything comes out. And I told her, and she starts finishing my sentences, and I was like, what? And she said, I think you have something called ADD. They didn't call it ADHD unless you were a boy back then. But I said, okay, well, what's that? And she told me about it, and I said, okay. And so what do I do? And she said, okay. And I went home, and I told my mom. She was a learning disabilities teacher. She was like, yeah, I've heard of that. I said, I want to go to the doctor. So we went, and they gave me some really powerful medication. There were only a couple options. This was in the mid-'90s, and or early 90s. And so they put me on one of those medications, and I graduated on time with my class, survived academic probation. It was great. But I am not a drug addict. I hated that medication. It practically gave me an ulcer, and I was like, mm-mm. So I went to a college prep high school. I graduated and took a year off because I just wanted to stop taking the medication. I'm grateful that I graduated, but I wasn't interested in learning any real skills on how to study or anything like that, so I just thought that my brain was in this little pill. And I was willing to be without my brain because I hated the pill so much. So what I really, and you can hear there's a little bit of rationalization in there, what I really wanted to do was get back to drinking. So I did. And I got a job, just an easy job, working, living at home. I had a pager. That was my only bill. They didn't have a lot of cell phones back then. And I just drank, I just drank. And I think that's when I really blossomed into being a full-blown alcoholic. I would go to parties. Like, I went to the liquor store one time, and you've seen that movie Leaving Las Vegas where he shows up at our house and he's got a suitcase just full of bottles? I went to a liquor store and I had this backpack, and I just filled it up full of bottles. And this guy behind the counter was like, ooh, finals are over? And I said, yeah. I mean, I wasn't even in school. And I was like, yeah, I was going to a finals party. So sure. But that was my really bad tequila night that I don't remember a lot of. Yeah, they followed the trail of puke to the bathroom and found me. But as I've been told. But yeah, I just started having a lot more, like, very deep blackouts, where the only thing I could remember the next day, and I would call them kind of like the transition moments, is like where I would be going from a party to a bar, and I'd be in somebody's car, and I'd have a flash of remembering being in someone's car. And then we'd be leaving the bar, and we'd be walking down the street somewhere else, and I'd have a flash of memory for that. But the rest of the night was gone. Like, that just became regular drinking for me. My regular nights, like, I lost days when you put them all together, months of my life. I don't even know, a lot. And, I would just piece together the next morning what I did based on my receipts and the amount of money that was not in my bank account. When I woke up with more money than I had at the beginning of the night, I was a little worried. And I would have bruises, and I'd look at my clothes, and I'd be like, I bought a little dog tag for my keys and my wallet, so I would clip them to my body, and then I wouldn't lose them. They have to be attached to me, and I was so proud of myself for figuring that out. But yeah, I was wild. Like, I would just go anywhere and do anything. It didn't even matter. Like, I was just a yes person, let's do it. And I got into some really sticky situations, like not desirable for anyone. And so I'm like, this is not good. I can see my life going into a direction that's not not beneficial to really, again, anyone. And I didn't even really like it. So I kind of got to the point where my mom started bugging me. She's like, okay, you've had a year off. Do you want to go back to school? Do you want to go to college? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I probably do. I mean, I didn't really want to go to school, but I didn't want what I saw coming, So I said, okay, I'll just get it. I'll apply to a bunch of schools and see where I can get in. I got into one school. I don't even know how this happened, but they didn't even have my major, but they kind of accepted me and made this little tiny major for me. And then they didn't have the resources to support that. So after 1 year, I transferred to a much bigger school down the street. And sorry, work is like blowing up my phone for some reason. I don't care. That sounds irresponsible. That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. I'm gonna turn this over. Y'all are just gonna have to tell me if I get close. Where was I? Oh yeah, so I transferred to this other school, and it was great. Like I could learn a lot, but I could also party a whole lot. And I was a technical theater major. We know how to really party. We know how to work really hard, and we know how to play very hard. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I dated a guy that was extremely dry. Like he knew he was an alcoholic, but he didn't work any program. He just didn't drink. And I think that was my way of kind of like vicariously testing out sobriety. I was like, shocker, I cheated on him. You know what I mean? Like I was unfaithful. What a surprise. But it started happening again, but this time I was doing things that were productive in my life, like I worked at school, had a job through them. I had a job outside of that, separate. I did a full-time class load. I was doing school, student director shows. I was working on those. I was super busy all the time. I was even doing, I had a summer job and I was doing projects outside of school, like theater shows. And you would think that everything would be great and all going in the right direction, but I was miserable. So I was just increasingly angry and dark and resentful. And, I didn't know that at the time. I just thought the world was a horrible place, and I remember I wrote this 10, 15 page manifesto of just spewing negativity. That's just how I was in my brain. That was my constant state. And it just got to the point where the only emotions that I felt was complete total numbness or pure rage. And I would drink to feel anything else, when I was sober, it was like, I don't care at all, or I'm going to kill everybody. And, that's not good. And so I think eventually what happened, and I didn't think about this or anything, but I think I was trying to drink myself to death. I was putting myself in more and more dangerous situations. I consider myself to have had 7 near-death experiences in my life, just because some were not my fault, but just because of just lack. It's not even poor judgment, just lack of judgment of making decisions and where I'm going and who I'm with and things like that. And I made it out pretty much unscathed, and I was going to see a doctor for this medication. I went back on it when I went to school. And it's funny, I would see them, and I had a few of them, because eventually they would all ask me about my drinking. And I was like, that is not why I'm here. Leave me alone, And I would lie to them about how much I was drinking, and they would still call me an alcoholic. And I would be like, you don't know anything, So I started wondering, am I an alcoholic? Because I told them a third of what I drink, not even. And they, if they knew the truth, they'd probably have me committed. So I just and there's a bunch of mental illness that runs in my family, and I just learned if I tell the truth about what's going on in my head, they're going to pump me full of drugs, I'm going to get all glassy-eyed, and I'm going to go away, and I don't want to go away. I want to be here even though I'm angry all the time. And so, as you all know, I was very conflicted, just existing. And I eventually got to the point where I had this one guy, and he didn't challenge me on anything. He didn't try to give me a hard time. He just kind of watched and listened. And I went in. I had to go in to get the prescription. It wasn't something they could call in. And I went in, and he said, "How you doing?" And I had definitely hit a bottom at that point, really bad. Like I would be in the subway. This is like something that caught my attention. I was in the subway, and like it's underground, so there's this vacuum of air that starts happening when the train is coming through the subway. It'll kind of like pull you in, and then right when the train comes, it'll blow you back. And I would stand right at the edge, and they'd be honking at me. People would be like, "Step back, miss," and I'm like, "I'm fine," because I just wanted to get sucked under that train, like. And I remember I yelled at a bus once because I was standing too close, and I was like, "You missed me," like I was just crazy. And those are the things where I was like, "Oh, that was okay. That wasn't okay. That was kind of dangerous and more than because I think I realized if I survive that, then I don't want to live like that." So anyway, this guy said, "How are you doing?" And I ended up telling him just the truth. And he was like, "Oh, okay." The doctor gets quiet and they listen. That's never good. But he said, "Okay, well, do you think he's like, "How much are you drinking?" And I was like, "Well, okay, I think about it." And he's like, "You can tell me the truth." And I was like, No, I'm trying to add it up." And I ended up telling him, and he was like, "Oh, wow, okay. Do you want to stop drinking?" And I was like, "I don't think I can, though. I mean, I've thought about it. I've tried, on my own, but it never lasts more than a day or so. I'm like, I just, I don't think I can live without it." And he was like, "Well, what if I told you that there are some people that I could connect you with? My colleague down the hall, for example. He could help you, figure it out." And he said, "Would you be willing to talk to him?" And I was like, "Sure, why not? I got nothing else going." And I had seen these people on the same floor. It's just a big building in downtown Chicago. And there was this like random group of people that would all come out together, go downstairs, smoke, and then come back up and go back in. And I'd be like, "Who are these people?" It was us. So I ended up starting intense outpatient treatment like 2 weeks later. And I was so pissed. I tried the night before. I knew it was my last night drinking. I was like, this is it. I cleared the night. It was just me and a bunch of alcohol at the house. And I was like so excited. I'm going to get so drunk tonight. And I could not get drunk. I was so mad. I drank so much alcohol and could not get drunk. I was like, oh. So anyway, I went in the next day, and I did what they told me. I realized that I was actually an alcoholic. There was a guy in there who was totally different from me in every way you can possibly imagine. He was, I was I think 23 at the time, and like I had a shaved head just because I didn't want to have hair. I didn't like having hair. There was no other reason. So I just shaved it all off. Like I told you, I was just nuts. So I walk in, and I'm this like middle class 23-year-old white girl with a shaved head and no piercings or tattoos, just a shaved head in college, and just hating life. And this guy is in there, and he's like in his 40s, African American, like blue class worker. He talked about what he drank. It was like a couple cases of beer every night. He had a bunch of kids. We couldn't be more different, except that we were both from Chicago. That's it. But when he talked about the way alcohol made him feel and why he drank, I mean, I still get just chills when I think about it, because nobody had ever described my feelings like that before. I had never heard it. I had never verbalized it. He was like talking about my spirit, and I was like, what? Like this guy had every number that I had. And by the time he was, every time he talked, and by the time he was done, and I was just like, okay, all right. He said he was an alcoholic. And I was like, well, I guess so. I guess I am. I'd always wondered. My dad was an alcoholic, and my mom's dad was an alcoholic, so I knew there was a good chance. And I knew that the way that alcohol felt to me and the way that I thought about it was not normal, right? Like even my alcoholic friends, I had an alcoholic group of friends that we would just meet and drink. And we never really talked about it, but what I felt was like very personal and deep and sacred and almost romantic, like it was something that, again, I was not going to tell people because I thought they would think I was crazy. I had rituals around drinking, all that, and this guy he said it. I mean, he could have said he was a zebra, and I'd be like, I'm a zebra, so. He said he was an alcoholic, and I was like, all right, I get it. I'm an alcoholic. I got it. So I finished that treatment program, and I lost touch with a bunch of people in the group except for one girl, but we eventually lost touch too. She could not stay sober. She was a complete cokehead, but I read the book. They told me to read the book. I got a sponsor. They told me to get a sponsor. I literally put it on the shelf and didn't take it down again. I went to meetings on my own for maybe a year and a half after that. I would go, I think about 3 times a week, and then about 2 times a week, and then once a week, and once every 2 weeks, and then once a month, and then what's the point, So I just stopped going. And about a year and a half, a year and a half in, I caught myself curled up on my kitchen floor. I'd graduated from college at that point. I had 3 basically full-time jobs because I was becoming a workaholic instead. It was like 3, 4 in the morning, curled up on my kitchen floor in the fetal position, sobbing, stone cold sober. And I was so pissed because what I heard in treatment was that alcohol was a problem. And I had not had anything to drink, and there was definitely still a problem. And I just thought I was crazy. I'm nuts, fine. But again, I was not going to tell a doctor the truth because I thought they were just going to drug me. So I decided something needed to change. I didn't know what. I ended up talking to a friend of mine that had moved to San Diego a little bit before that. Short version of the conversation is, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm freezing. What are you doing? I'm sitting by the pool at 70 outside. And I said, oh, I'm going to come move there. It was like February, January in Chicago. It's cold. Y'all don't know. It's really cold. So I moved because I decided the entire city of Chicago was my problem. I had no way of dealing with my resentments. I was just rolling through. No wonder I was so angry and crazy. I was just rolling through life, just acquiring new resentments, sitting on the old ones. Of course, I hated everybody still. And so I left, did a geographic. About 2 months later, I was miserable all over again. So I drank, but I planned it. I drank on a Thursday. There was a cute guy at work who was kind of a jerk. I found out he thought I was cute. I said, oh, well, that's all I need, really. So I asked him out on Friday. We went out. And then on Saturday, and I kept him for 5 years. So I knew he was a drinker, so I was like, that's fine. I'll just get drunk the day before I ask him out. That's okay. So I did, and the relationship was okay for a very short period of time, and then it was not okay, and then it got bad. And about a year and a half into my drinking, he was going to break up with me because I do have time. So I went to a party, and I had vowed I'm never going to do cocaine, ever. Because my sister got strung out on it, my stepsister got strung out on it. That's just a line I'm never going to cross. And I go to this party without him. He's out of town. I knew he was coming back the next day or something like that. Maybe that day. Yeah. 3rd of July. I am drinking. We start out shotgunning beers on the beach. Not a good idea, unless you really want to forget the whole day. So I'm blacking out in and out throughout the whole day. End up at a party later that night with this one girl. It was his softball buddy's girlfriend. She was my only friend. She didn't care how much I drank because she was too busy doing coke. So I'm at this party and I get him on the phone and I say, I'm ready to come home, come pick me up. I'd never got a driver's license, by the way, because I never wanted a DUI. So that was my alcoholic genius. So it worked. I found out later you can get a DUI without a license, but it never got that far. I never learned how to drive. So I would never have to be the designated driver. All that means is I got in the car with really drunk people driving. That didn't stop anything from happening. So I was like, okay, I'm ready for you to come pick me up. And he's like, no, I thought you were going to be home. I'm not going to come to the party. I'll just see you when you get back. And I was like, but I want to come home now. And so we got into a fight on the phone, hung up the phone. I went and found her. She'd been offering me coke the whole night. I went and found her and I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm really mad. I'm going to do some cocaine. So I did 2 lines, instantly sobered up, completely sober. I was so pissed off. I was like, why? Why would anybody want this? Like, I don't get it, you know? So that's my drug story. I was like, so I got drunk all over again. And ended up getting home at like 3, 4 in the morning the next day. And I just get on the couch. I don't even want to deal with him. He comes out to go to work and he's like, what is wrong with you? And I said, well, here's what happened. And I told him, and he was like, oh my God, you clearly don't care about yourself anymore. I don't know how you could possibly care about this relationship, much less me. And I was like, what? And he's just like, I think this is it. Like, we had become a fighting couple. People who just fight everywhere all the time, you know? I mean, I grew up in a house like that, so, like, it wasn't that abnormal to me. But he was like, I'm done. I can't watch this anymore. He'd already put a lot of restrictions and started marking bottles, and it was just lame. But So I, he would not take me to the bar because I just became one of those people who, instead of carrying the big guy out, I was like melting off the stool onto the floor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, our tolerances fluctuate. It was annoying. But I kind of panicked and I called my mom. I slept for the rest of the day. And then when I woke up at like 5 in the evening, I called my mom and I said, hey, I think I have a problem again. And she had been a little trained by Al-Anon at that point, thanks to that outpatient therapy. And she was overqualified because of her family and my dad and like everything. And she said, hey, do you think, she listened and listened. She said, do you think maybe it's time to go back to AA? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I guess I'll give it a try. So I pulled the yellow pages down, giant thing like this, and opened up, found AA, and called the number. And it was the 4th of July. And there was a guy sitting in the office in the evening, fireworks are going off, answering the phone. And I got to meet him later I thought he was like in New York or something. He was right there in San Diego. I got to meet him at a meeting later, which is so cool. He had me get in touch with, he had a lady call me, and she picked me up for a meeting the next day with another lady who became my sponsor pretty quickly. And I didn't work the steps with her because a couple months into that relationship, I ended up, I'd call her and be like, everything is fine. And she'd ask me some questions, and I'd get off the phone and be like, no, I'm pissed off, And I'd be like, now I want to drink. I don't think it's supposed to work this way. And so I decided I didn't want to do my 4-step with her because I didn't like her and I didn't trust her anymore. And I got a new sponsor who she was taller than me, which was impressive to begin with. And she was like a serious big buck thumper. And I did the steps with her, and it was awesome. We did the traditions at the same time, which was amazing. And I got free. I did the steps. I did, my relationship got better, and, everything was good. And then he wanted to move back to Las Vegas, where he was from. He grew up in a little town outside of Vegas to be by his family. And I said, okay, I got a couple years now, that's fine. So we moved to Vegas, and it was kind of a rough move, but we get there. my car, like the tire blew up on the way there, and I got stranded on the side of the freeway, and yeah, he wouldn't pick me up, and it was bad. I should have, like, there were all these signs, don't do this, you know, but I'm glad I ignored the signs, because what happened is in Las Vegas, I almost got drunk. Like, I was extremely close. I got really resentful toward everybody in San Diego for not calling me every 5 minutes to check and see how I was doing, and like they did things differently, and everybody had drugs in their story, and I was just like, oh my god, I don't know how anybody's sober here, and I just got really judgmental, and picked one group to be my home group, and insisted on being the greeter, even though they didn't really do that there. They just kind of laughed at me, and I'd be like, welcome to the meeting, and they're like, we know who you are. And I'm like, that's fine, come on in, you know. And this one girl thought that was cute, so she did it with me. And we became friends. And in the meantime, I never said, my ex never stopped drinking. So in the fridge, the first 3.5 years of my sobriety was beer, and there was alcohol. Not everywhere, but I learned how to be sober around alcohol. And I'm super grateful for that today, because, there could be somebody drinking a beer in front of me, and I just don't care. The temptation is not in that bottle anymore. It's in my heart if I'm not doing this program. So what I did was I started planning a drink. I ended up realizing what I was doing, calling that one friend. She was like, oh crap, okay, we're going to a meeting tonight, you know, and we went, and she said, you're getting a new sponsor right away. And I said, okay. And so I got a new sponsor. I was like fantasizing about putting my hand in the garbage disposal just to get a moment of relief, because I was so angry again, you know, like crazy. And I was never going to tell anybody that. And I heard this lady share that at a meeting, and I was like, that's my sponsor. I was like, yes. She said no. But then my one friend recommended this other lady who was from Southern California, so she knew about my plight of the differences. And that lady cried all the time. And I was like, that's really annoying. I don't want her to be my sponsor. But I asked her, and we did the steps, and I was free all over again. Like, it's amazing. This program freed me over and over. And then my relationship ended. The company that I was working for, which I got a job there just as a data entry clerk, I applied the traditions very deliberately to that job. I'd never worked for a big company like that before, and I needed to just be one of many, just trying to just be a worker. And I just was like, okay, I'll do whatever you tell me. I don't care. Stand on my head in the lobby, just pay me. I don't care. And so they really liked that attitude. So they ended up they laid off like 30% of the company in like 08, 09 when the economy dropped out. And they ended up giving me 2 other people's jobs, like a big raise. And then they said, okay, this office is closing, but we're opening up a new one in North Carolina. I told my boss that I had ended it with my ex, because I finally was willing to take some action, and I wasn't just stuck in step 6. I would call my sponsor and be like, he's a jerk, and she'd be like, what are you going to do differently? Are you willing to break up with him? And I'm like, no. She'd be like, okay, talk to you later, you know. What do you mean? So I finally took some action, ended that relationship, and the second I told my boss, she was like, you're going to North Carolina, because she knew I was there to be with him and start a family, but that just wasn't happening. So that's how I ended up in North Carolina, and I'm super grateful, because right when I got here, I was like, I'm not letting what happened before in Las Vegas happen. I don't want to bottom out again. I'm getting lots of AA people. So I moved there, and I didn't know anybody. I had a couple people from the company that also moved here, and they knew I didn't know anybody, but I'm going out every night. I'm like, I'm going to a camp out. I'm going to, out with some friends, and they were like, who? I was like, I got 3 home groups. I went to like 8 meetings a week. Like, it was awesome. I got really involved. So, it was great. I ended up getting a new sponsor right away again. And when I got here, I'm going to skip over this part. I was going through 2 breakups, kind of, you know how we do. So, Yeah, so I was hitting some emotional bottoms when I got here, and I formed this relationship with this new sponsor. We started working the steps, and I called her one night and I said, "Hey, I'm not doing well, and I'm emotionally, I feel like I'm like completely out of control." And she said, "Okay, have you prayed about it?" And I was like, "God, okay, look." I'm like, I've been saying that I believe in God this whole time. I had 4 years at this point. I said, I've been saying that I believe in God. I'm like, I don't, like I feel like a fraud, but like I've been able to stay sober. The steps have been working. Like I don't know what this whole spirituality thing is, but like, I'm doing this, and I think it's because I moved to North Carolina. Like I couldn't lie anymore. Like, it's Bible Belt, I was like, oh God, they're gonna know. So I just outed myself, and she was like, okay, what? And I started telling her why. She was like, stop. She was like, what do you believe in? I don't care what you don't believe in. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was so fixed on what I didn't believe in, like justifying this like firmness. And I'm an atheist agnostic, depending on the, minute you ask me. But I started exploring. She helped me. It was really nice. She started helping me find the things that I did believe in, and really just digging into that and finding more and more and more, until finally I found something that made a lot of sense to me. And I don't know how to describe it. I know it's cheesy. It's like the world went from black and white to color. Like, it's just, things opened up. I started understanding things I didn't understand before. People actually started asking me to sponsor them, like, because I was just dark and kind of shut down before, so I don't know, it got so much better. And then I found a like-minded group of people that practiced a tradition and a ceremony that made a lot of sense to me, and I still do that today, and it's just I love AA for so many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons for me is that you can believe or not believe in whatever you want. As long as you don't think you're it, you can still be an AA member. It doesn't even matter. And my concept of a higher power, it changes all the time, and I still get to be here. This place, it truly is non-denominational. And I have learned what ego is, and what all that crap that keeps me weighed down and stuck in myself. I even had an almost fight with somebody at work today. Thank God I had to leave, otherwise it might have turned into one. But I ended up I called my sponsor, she didn't pick up. I called somebody else, she talked me off the angry ledge. My sponsor ended up calling me back, and I talked to her on the way here, and out of my mouth came the words, I would very much like to have a conversation with her, but I want to approach her with forgiveness and not punishment. And I was like, what? Where did that come from? I was like, what? This really does work. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing. And I can tell you guys, she outed my sobriety in front of like a bunch of other people. And I was just annoyed. I'm not embarrassed of being an alcoholic. I think it's so funny that people come to AA and suddenly they're like, shh, you know what I mean? Like, we clean up our acts, we're doing the right thing, we're getting our lives together, and we're like, we can't tell anybody. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, I'm not embarrassed or ashamed about being an AA member or being a sober alcoholic at all. And that's the way I introduce myself. I don't tell people I'm an alcoholic. I say I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, if that's appropriate, but I might tell them I'm a sober alcoholic if that's not appropriate to throw in the AA, depending on who I'm talking to and when. But my sponsor reminded me, and this had already occurred to me, God's in it. God's in there somewhere, and I use the word God to represent what it is I believe in. I believe that somebody needs to know that I'm sober, and that they hopefully will be able to come talk to me. And that's, the purpose of what today was about. And I don't have to punish her, persecute her for her lapse in professional judgment. So anyway, I do want to, let me see, I do want to mention a couple of things. So when I had I don't know, roughly 15 years, I decided that I was gonna go back to school. It took me about 5 years to decide that I wanted to go back to school. When I got my first bachelor's, I said, I'm never going to school again. I hate this. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't want to do homework or papers ever again. And I remember, I walked and I was like, never again. And when I was 40, I decided to go back to school. So the job that I had that brought me here, I am eternally grateful for that. I got extremely involved in service work here. I don't have to give y'all a corrections plug. You all know what it's about. I got to be involved in setting up the hotline in Raleigh when it first started in like 2010. I've been able to be involved in like almost every level of the service structure, and I'm so, so grateful for that. But what that honestly has helped teach me too is the accountability necessary to go back to school when you're 40, after not being a student for 20 years and relearning how to learn and making extreme sacrifices, like being told what my schedule is for the next 2 years, you know. I decided, instead of being in an industry that I cared nothing about, which was killing my spirit, that I wanted to become a nurse because I wanted to help people, so I went off the deep end. But you know, God intervened, and I'm a nurse in the OR now, and I love it so much. Like, it's ridiculous that I get paid for it. I love it that much. And I just never ever, ever thought that I was going to have a job where I could say that. And I wish my dad was alive today, that I could tell him that. I already mentioned he was an alcoholic. He, unfortunately, drank himself to death. Literally. There's a lot of people that pass because of alcohol-related illnesses. On my dad's death certificate, it actually says acute alcoholism. My stepmom was a nurse, and she ended up taking care of him. They also had hospice come in his final days, and the order of elimination that he was taking in, first they stopped giving him food, and then they stopped giving him vodka, and then they stopped giving him water, and then he died. So I know, you know, I really wish, the one thing he always said to me was, I want you to be happy. He knew I was miserable in my job. He's like, I want you to be happy with your job. You know, if you hate work, if you love work, you know, you'll never hate going in. You'll like it, you know, it'll be what I just said, silly that you're getting paid for it, you know? And I wish I could tell him that. But unfortunately, this alcoholism took him out. He passed before I could even get this like school thing under my belt or anything like that. And I know that if I go out drinking again, and you know, I have 19 years, like I'm not gonna say drinking has never occurred to me. Of course it has. You know, life happens. I've had drinking dreams. It doesn't mean I'm gonna get drunk. And I have people I can talk to. I have a sponsor, I have steps, all of that. I have prayer, I have meditation, spiritual practice, all of it. But I do know that if I go out drinking again, he's already shown me what my future is going to be, you know, and it's not pretty. It is not at all. It's not subtle. It's not romantic. It is long and drawn out and ugly. And, you know, sometimes I take this program a little too seriously, but it's because it truly is life and death for me, as it is, I think, for all of us. And very, very few people get to be here. So I'm really grateful that you guys had me tonight and that you all came. Thank you.